Hello and welcome to Attacking Third, a CBS Sports Soccer podcast. I'm Sandra Herrera, lead NWSL writer for CBS Sports, joined today, as always, by my colleague and co-host, Lisa Roman, broadcaster and analyst for CBS Sports. On today's show, we've got a big one for you. So,
Ooh,
of course, we're going live with it. We've got a midweek recap of everything. It feels like you thought the summer of soccer was over. Incorrect. We've got NWSL action that we've got to recap, the Women's Cup. We've got WICC. We've got some more news and notes, some trade news. And we've even got a weekend slate of games to preview for everybody. So let's get into it. Before, though, we want to let you know that you can watch all of our episodes and exclusive interviews on YouTube. Subscribe to our page to get notified whenever we go live, youtube.com/attacking third. And an additional heads up, we need you to please check your spam folders for an
yes.
email with the subject Podcast Awards Final Slate Voting. If you voted for us in the Podcast Awards, we really appreciate all your help. And now there is the final round. So go ahead and vote for Attacking Third to win Best Female Hosted Podcast. Thank you all so much. Lisa, how you doing? We got to
I
talk
am
about it all.
I am so good, Sandra. We have someone in our chat right now. Tyler, shout out to you saying, "Hey, I don't have enough eyeballs for all the soccer happening right now." Tyler, us either. There's
That's
so
the
much
energy.
happening. Our rundown right now is so packed of everything that we have to talk about, and touch on, recap, preview. But like it's great. It's almost like champagne problems because there's so
Yeah,
much
right?
football that we get to watch and we get to absorb and soak up, and it's
Yeah.
so good. The competition is so good. Like, that's the other thing. It's not like it's crappy soccer.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Like, we want to be clear about it. Like, there's so much going on still, even in August. We went from July to an active August as well. And we love it and we're enjoying it. But yeah, Tyler hit it right on the head. I just simply don't have enough eyeballs. I'm not disappointed that there's so much awesome women's soccer happening. Like, no, give it to me all the time when you can. But yeah, that's the downside of it, right? We only have the two eyes, and some of us only have so many devices to try to like
Only so many
streamline these
screens. I'm
things
like
at once.
I'm like stealing my fiance's work laptop. I'm like, "I need to watch Paramount Plus on this. I need to upgrade my subscription so I get more screens,
Yeah,
like
right.
more
Like
soccer, more soccer." And of course I have to watch it all live because
that
that's just
always
how it works, because then you gotta be on Twitter and we gotta come recap it on here, and there's only just so many hours in the day. I love it. I love it.
you like touch, like you hit on it, like correct. It's just like gotta see it, and then you have all these like different streams going, and then you get hit with the like, hey, you're streaming too many things at once, and you're like, I needed to watch this stuff for my job. What are you talking about? It's so funny whenever that happens to me. But I'm excited to chat about it all with you, and not just the recaps of these games. We're
Oh, Sandra, you muted yourself.
no, my back.
Welcome back.
Thanks, everybody. I was just so excited to be here. My mic decided to just cut itself off. But we're not going to just do the recaps. I was saying that we're going to make the picks for everyone as well. So we're going to have that for you. But we're going to try to go in a little bit of order here. And we had a number of games kicking off in midweek action this week. So why don't we start with WICC? Because this maybe gave some surprises for some folks. We had Lyon and Chelsea and Portland Thorns going up against Monterrey Rayadas' first, appearance in the WICC, and naturally, we had both of these games end in regulation in draws. So we had Lyon and Chelsea end in a 2-2 draw, and then we had Portland Thorns and Monterrey end in a 1-1 draw. And so at the end of regulation, going through some things, they had to come down to penalty kicks in these two games. And so as it went to penalty kicks, you had Lyon advancing, and then you had Monterrey advancing as well. So you had Portland Thorns get taken down, unable to defend their WICC crown for 2021. And the final is going to be set up between Lyon and between Monterrey. This is an exciting time. I love it. I was very excited to see Liga MX Femenil teams participate in each of these respective competitions, whether it was WICC or Women's Cup, and we're going to talk about that as well. But I feel like it kind of matched the energy for me. Coming out of July where we saw a lot of suspenseful moments, right, in some of these international competitions, to sort of see this kind of boil over into August, where there's still this suspenseful level of play, but it's at the international club level.
Yeah.
And so that's been really, really cool for us to sort of witness here.
The WICC has been fantastic to watch. I mean, this opening night of games on Wednesday really made it exciting. I'm so excited for Saturday to watch the final that's happening in the WICC. But there's so many emotional things happening off the pitch in the WICC because Lindsay Horan, who spent many years at the Portland Thorns, is now playing for Lyon. And she came back to Providence Park. There was a bit of a homecoming for her to see some of her old teammates play in front of the Portland fans in Oregon, and for Lyon to win. Horan ends up getting a goal on a great set piece. So like the emotional factor of this is there and truly fantastic. Then in the Portland versus Monterrey game, in this one also ending in tie, like the football was fantastic. A 2-2 tie between Lyon and Chelsea, and then a 1-1 tie. Both of these going into penalty kicks, which just makes it that much more suspenseful. However, during the Portland game, the U.S. international defender for Portland and midfielder Crystal Dunn entered the booth alongside Lori Lindsay, Jen Hildreth, and they had a little interview conversation with Crystal Dunn. It was fantastic. It was great for her to kind of talk about stuff again and say how her pregnancy journey was, giving birth to her son, starting her family, how mom life is, and then most importantly, like when she'll be back on the pitch, because Jen asked that, Lori asked that, they wanted to know. She's working on it. She's working on getting back for both club and country. So that was really good to see. But yeah, I mean, these late night games were fantastic and so fun to watch. And I am very excited for the final on Saturday.
Yeah, same here. I think there's always that layer of when you're looking at teams who are kind of maybe in that preseason form, you're kind of like, well, what are we gonna see here from these teams? And then you have other teams who are currently in season, whether it's a Thorns or Monterrey. So I think it was a really good mix of mutual energies, I think, on the pitch. So hopefully match day 1 will lead into some exciting things for the third place match or the final in WICC. You can catch all that action on August 20th. So tune in to see who comes out on top. But it's not just club international tournaments that we're taking a look at right now. There is a World Cup in progress, and it's the FIFA U-20 World Cup. And we had to touch on this because unfortunately, USA took on Japan in a Group D finale, and they had some scenarios coming into play here with Group D, and unfortunately, they suffered a 3-1 loss in this Group D decision day type of scenario, Lisa.
Yeah, this the U-20 Women's World Cup is incredible soccer. So for those that haven't been watching, although the US is now out, they are knocked out after this loss. It's still incredible soccer to watch. So tune in and watch these games happening. But for the US U-20, this 3-1 loss to Japan was hard to watch almost. It was the talent that the US has on this team is incredibly high, and they just fell a little bit short against this Japanese side, who is also reigning champions of the U-20 Women's World Cup. They won in 2018, but this Group D finale, it was ultimately 0-0 at halftime. And the first half was incredibly evenly matched between these two sides. The U.S. had some chances. Ali Senator, a USA forward, she had a great opportunity, a shot from about the penalty spot that really could have set the tone for this game in the first half, especially for the U.S. But in the second half, Japan gets on the board first. And it was a turnover, a counterattack moment, a breakdown on the United States side that Japan just capitalized on and ended up scoring this one. Then 12 minutes later, Japan doubles their lead. They end up getting a second goal. It was off a set piece, a corner kick for this second goal. And the U.S. just looked to be deflated. I mean, 12 minutes apart to get 2 goals against. But the U.S. does get one. The final ends 3-1. So the United States does get a goal in the 70th minute. Alyssa Thompson, she gets the assist on a cross to Simone Jackson. It was Jackson's first goal of the World Cup tournament, but then 84th minute, Japan gets their third and final header goal. This goal had a lot of controversy. It was initially called offside. Then they went to a VAR decision. But ultimately the goal counts. It's good, 3-1. But in terms of like the statistics in this match, although like just watching from the naked eye, I think that the first half was very evenly matched, and the second half maybe had the upper hand to the Japanese side. But both teams had 12 shots on goal, 3 corner kicks. But Japan was just a bit more clinical. So Japan finishes first in the group. Netherlands finish second in the group. Both Japan and the Netherlands advance, and the United States U-20 side is knocked out of the U-20 World Cup. Pretty devastating. This was a great chance for the U-20 team. It's very sad for them, but the future is bright for those players that are in college and heading into the NWSL in their next couple of years. And I'm sure we'll see a handful of them playing at the national team senior level before long.
Yeah, most likely. I mean, there's a couple of them already playing pro, right? Whether it's Jaden Shaw or Olivia Moultrie. Quite frankly, I believe Alyssa Thompson looks good enough to perhaps maybe make a choice, right, for herself moving forward. And I think when you look at these types of competitions, the World Cups, sometimes the luck of the draw kind of comes back to get you. I mean, this was not an easy group to get out of, and sort of seeing the team's performance against Netherlands, and then having to go up against Japan. You'd wondered if just maybe this was going to be a really tough group, and it turns out it really did shake out that way. But I would say, like, even looking at some of the play throughout this, from the U-20 team, there's a lot there. I'm with you, Lisa. I think there's a lot of promising things there. I don't think that this finish is representative of the talent that was on this U-20 team. Unfortunately, that's soccer at its one of its highest levels, and at the end of the day, that's how things shake out. So we're gonna probably get a chance to see a lot of these players, like you mentioned, go back to their collegiate programs and be able to sort of keep up with them and follow them there. And some of them will get to watch in NWSL action as well. And that's also equally exciting. So congrats to the team for representing the crest, and hopefully we get to continue to see more success for them. But let's dive back into club competitions here. We've got to chat about the Women's Cup, because there were 3 matches that took place in midweek action for this competition, and there was a match to determine what was ultimately 5th and 6th place of this competition, but also the 2 semifinal matches to determine the finalists in the Women's Cup. Tokyo Verdy taking on Tottenham for 5th place. Tokyo Verdy coming out on top of this one, 2-1, defeating Tottenham in the first of this triple header of matches. And then we were very excited, of course, to see the introduction of the NWSL teams in this competition. They had a straight bye to this semifinal round because the tournament expanded this year, right? 4 teams to 6 teams, multiple match stages versus just a semifinal round and a final round compared to last year. So quarterfinals took place already, and then the semifinal matches featured Racing Louisville FC against AC Milan, and OL Reign versus Club America to determine 2 spots in the Women's Cup final. And I believe, if memory serves me correctly, in our recaps of these, Lisa, I think we both went for Racing against AC Milan, and then in OL Reign, I believe you had OL, and for parity's sake, I said, let me go with Club America. And I gotta say, watching these matches, I was kind of like, Oh my goodness. The OL Reign in Club America, when I was like, this has like the feelings of kind of a Club World Cup final energy to it. And I really, really enjoyed it. We were a little bit curious as to what we were going to see from Laura Harvey, which is what kind of, I said, let me just roll the dice with Club America and see here. Because we saw something similar, like how we saw out of Angel City when they had their exhibition game against Tigres Femenil. We saw a lot of the Reign's depth players coming in and getting starting roles in this match against Club America. And it looked promising for a second there for the Liga MX Femenil side, but this one ends 2-1 in late game excitement. Quite frankly, you had Club America get on the board first with Kiana Palacios, and they had a quick 1-0 lead in the second half, but just quick turnaround. You had Ziara King in the 79th minute. Just a few minutes later, Van der Yak with the go-ahead goal, and now they're going to be heading to the Women's Cup final. And let's chat a little bit about racing too, because we had them picked. What did you think about that game, Lisa?
Yeah, so we both had Racing Louisville, and then, as you said, Club America, OL Reign. I'm always so impressed when you remember our picks. Maybe my brain is just a little too scrambled that I never know, hence my notebook. But yes, you were correct on our picks. Yeah, I mean, this OL Reign Club America game was very entertaining to watch.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Like, all of the soccer right now is so good. But between Racing Louisville and AC Milan, this game was also fantastic. There was a disallowed goal. There was 2 goals for Racing Louisville. But it took a little bit for Racing Louisville to find the back of the net ultimately, but they had a lot of possession. They had a lot of momentum throughout this match. I mean, Racing Louisville looks like an incredibly impressive team. We saw Wang Shuang, the Chinese international who signed with Racing Louisville, play significant minutes and make a significant impact in the midfield for Racing Louisville as a player that can control the pace of play, switch the point of attack, be creative, and be in the attacking end and just create so many chances. So Shuang actually had the first goal for Racing Louisville that was then disallowed. It came off of a corner kick. It was then offside, but because of that, I think it fired up the Racing Louisville team even that much more. Nadia Nadim ends up getting on the board a little bit of a flick header in. It was really cheeky from Nadim. And then Wang Shuang, she redeems herself and she gets another goal, making it 2-0 for Racing Louisville. The second goal by Shuang was just incredible. It was a bouncing ball coming out of the box. AC Milan tried to clear, and Shuang hits it directly into the ground. So it bounces up and over AC Milan's goalkeeper's head and right into the back of the net. It was beautiful. And the celebration from Nadia Nadim and Wang Shuang was just so fun to watch. These 2 players played together previously. They have a lot of experience there. And now to have them back on the same team, both scoring goals in this match. This is the first goal we've seen from Wang Shuang. It doesn't count as an NWSL goal, though. So,
but important though, right? I mean,
she's at home for Racing Louisville.
Yeah,
like,
she's still technically like new to the team, getting acclimated to playing alongside her teammates, and hopefully, maybe that'll be a little bit of foreshadowing. Like maybe we'll see some of these performances translate into, NWSL regular season matches, because they're going to have a chance to compete for a trophy against another NWSL side. But I'm a little bit curious. Again, I'm still curious as to how these 2 teams are going to look for the championship final here. And maybe like this is where we'll do our little preview, because it's official. So you've got OL Reign, who
I wanted. It's just what I cooked up.
Yeah, we said them in the preview. We would like to see it, and we're going to see it. But Laura Harvey, rolling the dice, giving a lot of her bench starting roles in the match against Club America. Important minutes for players who probably are still building those, with this OL Reign side. But then you had what looked like to me for Racing, I'm like, that's a starting 11. Quite frankly, I was just like, this is something that we could potentially see for this team to kind of close out the remainder of their regular season. And maybe it's going to be a little bit of a mix of, let's try to close out the season as strong as we can with a bit of momentum. Maybe try to keep playing spoiler. But I loved kind of seeing these early bits of chemistry between all these vets. Quite frankly, I thought Jess McDonald had a really, really good game in this semifinal, and was really, really an integral piece.
She broke ankles.
Yeah,
with Jess
like
McDonald. She was part
AC
of.
Milan didn't know what to do with Jessica McDonald. It was a struggle.
So fun to watch her. Frankly, she did the same thing like 3 times and was more and more successful each time she did it. Attacking 2 defenders, taking the space, getting moves around, sending crosses into the box. She is the reason why Racing Louisville had so much success in their attack and created so many chances. I mean, Jess McDonald is so good. No wonder why she leads the NWSL in assists, because she sets up her teammates so well.
Yeah. It was cool to see that against AC Milan. So I'm still curious of what that's a quick turnaround. You know, are we going to see a similar lineup against OL Reign? You know, they didn't have their typical starters, in that semifinal. So we'll see what it looks like in the Women's Cup. Do you want to make a pick, Lisa? Who do you think is going to lift the cup?
I think Racing Louisville is going back to back. I think I do. I really do. Right. I think that because this game isn't an NWSL match, like this match does not count towards the NWSL regular season, that we could still see a bit of player rotation from both Racing Louisville and OL Reign. But I think that to win this cup means a little bit more to Racing Louisville because it's at home, because they won it last year. It's their tournament. Like, I think that Kim Bjorkegren and this squad are doing anything and everything they can to get this win. Not that OL Reign isn't, but I think that Laura Harvey, we could see a little bit more player rotation from her, as though they're still going to go out there and win. But between what we saw from Racing Louisville against AC Milan and then OL Reign versus Club America, I think that Racing Louisville is just on some type of energy right now. I think they're going to get the win over OL Reign.
Right. Well, you know what? Let's just go for parity's sake. I'm going to go the opposite. I'm going to go OL Reign. I think Laura Harvey will make some adjustments in this cup final, because this is the game where the actual trophy is going to be on the line. And it's a little bit different if you're a Racing Louisville side that's kind of been struggling in the NWSL regular season, going up against a different European side that happens to be in a little bit perhaps of out of season form, perhaps. And I think once they kind of level things out, NWSL versus NWSL, I think OL Reign might be the ones to come out on top. But we'll all have to watch and stay tuned to see if we were correct or incorrect. Just a quick reminder, you can watch the third place match and the cup final Saturday, August 20th at 8 p.m. Eastern and 11 p.m. Eastern, respectively. Tune in and make sure you also tune into us in our recap of everything. But we're not done with this episode by any means. We've got more to chat about after a quick break. We've got some NWSL news and, of course, an NWSL midweek recap and preview ahead of this weekend's slate of games. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
We found your daughter. She's alive.
Mister? It's Mommy. 4 years is a long time. Welcome home.
I think something's going on with Esther.
She seemed different.
Since she got back, there's constant lying. There's outbursts of anger.
Orphan First Kill, rated R, streaming August 19th on Paramount+.
All right, we're back. Let's chat a little bit of NWSL news before we get into actual NWSL matches. The league announcing a few new front office hires. They've gone ahead and made a hiring for a new chief marketing officer. So welcome to Julie Haddon. They've made a hire for Tatiana Hani, which is the new chief sporting director, and Bill Order, a chief operating officer and chief legal officer. And some of these names might be familiar because of their connection to the sport in the past, probably in particular Julie Haddon. She was an investor that was announced with the Chicago Red Stars franchise in 2021, but she has officially divested from the Chicago Red Stars before accepting this new role.
Yeah, so 3 new hires. Commissioner is making some moves, getting some people in the offices. They also announced a couple months ago that they were moving the offices from Chicago to New York. So a lot of changes happening in the NWSL. But some of these names, as you mentioned, Julie Haddon was with investor with Chicago. She also spent 5 years with the NFL as a senior vice president, global brand and consumer marketing. So in her new role as chief marketing officer, she'll see like the planning, the development, executing of the NWSL advertising, media, marketing for fans and players, promotion, social media, influencers, research, brand efforts. There's a lot really that falls under her, but the promotion of the league is a lot of where that comes from and the public eye. So big role for Julie Haddon. And then for Hani as the chief sporting director, she spent years with the Swiss Football Association, the director of women's football there. And then before that, she was with FIFA for 18 years. So a soccer-minded person for sure in Hani as the chief sporting director. She will collaborate with the players, the officials, the stakeholders. She'll help develop the procedures, the policies, the programs to implement the players, the coaches, the referees. This is those types of people. They all have titles and names and incredibly important jobs. And then Bill Order, he was a lawyer, but then before that, before he spent time in his law firm, 23 years in the MLS and with United Soccer Marketing as the operations, player personnel, legal, and business. So it's essentially the same role for him that he had in MLS, but now he's doing it with the NWSL. So player affairs and operations, administration of rosters and negotiations of contracts and disciplinary actions, game, medical operations, everything legal with like expansion teams, the discovery process when young players like Jaden Shaw want to come into the fold, Olivia Moultrie, Bill Order will be handling all of that. So a couple of new hires. I think like in the grand scheme of things, this is good for the league, right? We're growing. We're getting people in that have worked in the NFL, that have worked in MLS, that have worked in football federations, that understand the global scape of this and how big the NWSL can be. And this is the first step to getting there and growing the league.
Yeah, I think that's where the signs are pointing. I think when you want to look at growth across the league, I think one of the things people were pointing at going into 2022 was the fact that there was a historic CBA that got put into place, and everyone said, "Great, this is a thing that you want to ensure gets put into place for the players ahead of this season and for future seasons to come." But that also means you're going to be looking at other roles and other areas across league offices, perhaps. And obviously that came into play with the hiring of a commissioner, and with Berman now there are other positions that they have recognized that needed to be filled. So welcome to all of the new folks in the front office who will be participating in their new roles for the league. Let's get into some game action, though. We do have a midweek match that we have to recap for everyone before we go ahead and make our previews and our picks for the upcoming weekend slate of games. There was one midweek match. We had Houston Dash taking on Gotham FC. Houston picking up another win here, 2-1 over Houston. Goals from Ebony Salmon, Marissa Vigiano, McCall Zerboni getting on the board for Gotham FC, but just wasn't enough in this one. Gotham picking up another loss.
This for poor Gotham, right? Like coming into this match, but frankly, I don't think it's that surprising what we saw from this side, and I don't know, the fact that they can't pick up wins, but we saw for the first time, because although Hugh Menzies, the new interim head coach for Gotham, stepped in last weekend, he's taking more passive role for Gotham. This time, this game out against Houston, a much more hands-on approach to this game. And I think it showed, because up until this point, Gotham has been a team that sits back, is very defensive, and frankly not that great in their defensive efforts because it's very individualized defense. Last night we saw a Gotham team that played as 11 players on the pitch and one unit, which we have not seen that at all this season. They defensively were very good 1v1 defenders, and then we're combining as a unit. We saw possession in the midfield between Cujo, Mewis, Zerboni. I think Cujo did a fantastic job of being that pivot player to switch the point of attack. There was so much more patience in keeping possession of the ball, finding the open player, passing it around. And then when you look up top at Smith, Purse, Sanamanu, at those players that were looking to create opportunities, I mean, it was just a much more well-rounded game from Gotham than we've seen in a very, very, very long time. On the other side, what? Give me some thoughts.
I would say maybe in the second half. I would say like it took both of these teams. It felt like in the first half that this was going to get real midweeky really quickly, if that makes any sense, for lack of a better word. I thought that the first half of this game was it took a while to get going. It was a little physical, a little choppy for me. But I'm with you in terms of it looking a little bit different for not just Gotham, maybe both teams, obviously into the second half.
I think both teams as well. But like the fact that if you take Gotham's last 5 games, they didn't play anywhere like this team we saw last night in those last 5 games. There was so much more cohesion from this team. And Hugh Menzies saying that one of the biggest things he did was tell this team that they are good and talented and they're worth it. And like sometimes just hearing that from a different person that hasn't been there for a long time, coming into a program to say like, you are very talented players, you are a good team, let's put it all together, is what a player needs as a little bit of a shakeup. It's almost a different perspective. It's not the same person saying, hey, we got it next week, let's go. It's someone new coming in. On the other side of it though, Houston Dash, this is a team that's on a bit of a tear. I mean, Ebony Salmon, holy cow, like how is she constantly doing this, scoring all of these goals? It's so fun to watch her. She's so excited. This is another great goal. She creates something out of absolutely nothing. Salmon creates this goal scoring opportunity for Houston in this match, and it really was the best of it. It kicked everything off for Houston. 73rd minute, she gets this goal, and then Marissa Vigiano with a beautiful strike. Just 3 minutes later, it was like bam, bam, bam for Houston. And then after this, Zerboni gets one, which was also a great goal, and Gotham fighting back to get in this one. But there's one thing we've got to talk about in this match. Midge Purse.
Well, before we get there, I mean, I want to touch on Ebony Salmon really quickly. We're just watching an incredible second half of the season performance, like in real time. Every time Salmon scores a goal or like provides a different attacking look for Houston, I'm just like, what went so wrong in Louisville that this player got moved and we're watching her tear it up with a completely different team and a different style, right? And we're talking like making the Golden Boot race a little bit more interesting as the season kind of enters, not even just second half, but like the final third of its season. 7 goals in 5 games. That's like a madness. Ebony Salmon is out there pulling off a madness like every game. So I think the timing in which this goal happens, I think, is also very important, because it's sort of dipping into areas where you're like, is this going to end up being one of those type of midweek matches where, again, it kind of like it ends in a draw, and on top of that, possibly a scoreless draw. But yeah, shout out to, another strong individual performance from this player. But I think maybe we can transition that into the point that you're trying to get to in this game, where sometimes you have like individual performances impact a game, even though it's a team sport. And then for Gotham's side, they had a player removed from a game, and then it sort of felt like it also impacted Gotham's game a little bit as well. And we're just above the hour mark, right? Before there's any goals in this game, there is a free kick scenario that comes into play. And as Houston is going to take this free kick, Midge Purse is involved in a call and is issued a second yellow, which results in a red and a send off for approaching. And I think maybe the reaction on the pitch kind of set some things in motion, perhaps because we saw Anumanu also receive a yellow for dissent on that. There was a lot coming out of Gotham in terms of, you know, the body language and the reaction to a call like that. What were some of your reactions as you were kind of watching in real time?
I think it's a way for a referee, Alex Beltier, to get a game under control for sure. I mean, so the fact that Purse already had a yellow card in the match, in terms of like the officiating perspective, that person is already on thin ice in the referee's eyes, in what they're doing. And as a player, you need to be smart and understand that you're already sitting on a yellow. So any nefarious foul that you make is potentially going to be a yellow just because you're already sitting on one. It like increases the aspect that you're going to get another one. Now, if Purse didn't have a first yellow card and she encroached on a free kick, I think it maybe would have been a card still in that sense, because you can't do that. You can't walk up to someone about to take a free kick and stop them from doing that by being 3 yards, 4 yards from them.
Yeah.
So the fact that she was already on a yellow made it an immediate yellow as soon as this happened. Then the fact that Anumanu gets a yellow for dissent and conversing after this card, that's something that was a little shocking to me. But I also don't know what Anumanu said. But from the broadcaster's perspective and from watching this game, there was like 5 Gotham players around the official. So Anumanu must have said something that didn't sit well, because then she ends up getting a yellow. But honestly, it's like a bad call for Midge Purse. What was she thinking? That's what I think. I'm like, you need to be a smarter player in order to know where you are in the game. You're in the 60th minute. You're already sitting on a yellow card. This kick was not like 1 yard outside of the 18, right? It was just over halfway. It's not like they're about to score and you're like, hey, I'm going to take one for the team. And
the positioning of it was like really.
I don't think it was necessary for Purse to step in front of the ball and try to block this, slow down the play at all.
Yeah, it's I just think it just kind of like goes in line maybe a little bit with like just kind of Gotham's season to date, quite frankly. You know, it's like I think people's, you know, reaction to it probably comes from the fact that it sort of bleeds into those arguments that people try to make week in and week out about officiating in the league. And I'm someone who's gonna be far less critical of officiating when they actually make the call versus when they don't make the call. So I'm like, okay, well, they saw that happening. She was already on a yellow, and it's a call that we don't often see made in NWSL, but that doesn't mean that once it's called, there's going to be like a lot of like chaos around it. So I think that perhaps that's probably some of the energy in that. It's similar to when, you know, perhaps an official doesn't give the yellow as often for keepers who time waste a lot, right? There's also a lot of freak out about that when the official actually issues the yellow about that. So it's like there's this kind of like picking and choosing about like when to want to be critical of refs versus like wanting to let things slide. I think it's just like more gasoline to the fire of this actual subject, you know. But when it got called in real time, I was just kind of like, oh, can't do that. It's also like a choice. Like you mentioned a really good point about where the positioning on the field that this free kick took place.
Yeah.
Don't try to play games in that moment, especially when like Houston's likely not going to, you know, find themselves in a really, really good opportunity off of this particular set piece, right? So I think you've got, at this point in the game, you've got one of your better players on the team sent off, and now this player is going to be unavailable for the next game. So I think, you know, obviously it goes without saying, Gotham FC is a better team when Midge Purse is on the pitch for them. But she wasn't for the remainder of this half. and will now not be with them for, I believe, the game against Orlando Pride is their next one coming up. So it's also, again, like it's also the timing in which this happens. Like sometimes like you get a player sent off and perhaps it opens things up a little bit differently, and players teams get different looks because they're forced to kind of make some adjustments. And I think we did see that a little bit from Gotham. But again, it's just one of these things where it was just little too late. And I think even with this goal from Viggiano specifically, you just sort of saw this. It was kind of like a clear, more of a defensive breakdown for me, versus like a moment of brilliance from Viggiano. I mean, she is someone that I think has been having a very quiet, successful season with Houston. She's not someone that I think people are looking at and saying, this is a player that has been absolutely integral to Houston's success. But when you're looking at her and her time on the pitch with this team, she is. The Sophie Schmitz of it all, I think, are going to be, the focal points and stuff like that. But Viggiano has been this type of player additionally in the midfield to kind of give different options for the Dash. So, getting the go-ahead goal when you're up against a team that's already down in general in the standings and maybe mentally, and then on top of that, down a player within a game, you're just watching this game and you're like, there's no way they're going to come back from this, right?
But then they end up getting a goal, right? McCall Zerboni gets one.
It's the little things, I guess. It's the little things, I guess.
Find the silver lining. But after Purse goes out, Menzies has to make a slew of changes, right? Now, at this point, you're down a player. Yes, it's a forward. It's not your center back, so things don't have to shift that much. But 3 changes happen. This is now the second time in 2 games that Houston is against an opponent that's playing down a player. And last time against Racing Louisville, they couldn't close it out. That game ends in a draw. This time, they still concede a goal. Like, I'm nitpicking here, but Houston, you can't concede a goal when you're up a player. Score 2, you got to hold that shutout, right? Like, those are integral points that Houston needs, especially towards the end of this regular season when they're at the top of the standings. They're tied with Portland, but goal differential comes down to being one of the tiebreakers. And if you're pushed out of, say, 3rd place into 4th, or 5th into 6th, or 6th into 7th, it comes down to goal differential. So that's something that I bet Houston's not too happy about, that they conceded a goal late in this one. But hey, these teams, they're back at it again this weekend. So we'll see.
Oh my goodness. You know what? Let's make the picks. That's called the transition, folks. Let's take a look at some of the slate of games that are happening this weekend. We're going to go ahead and make our picks for you. Let's start with Kansas City Current versus Angel City FC. They're kicking things off on Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Lisa, who you got in this one?
So this game is on CBS Sports Network. It's in Kansas City. We'll have JP, Allie on the call. We'll have Allie Trost, giving her a shout out. She'll be on the sidelines. She's a buddy of mine in Kansas City. So big game, big energy for these two sides. So between Kansas City and Kansas City, Current and Angel City, this matchup is huge, but home field advantage, I give it to Kansas City in this one, like a point blank. I'm going to stick with that and go with that. The run that Kansas City has been on in the recent form that they're in is just truly fantastic. They're on 10 games undefeated. They've won 4 of their last 5. They're just on a bit of a run. Meanwhile, Angel City, yes, they're coming off of a win over Chicago, that 1-0 win last weekend, but they've slowly dropped in the standings week in and week out. And I just don't see Kansas City dropping this big time network game at home against Angel City. This will be a huge game. But because there's only 4 matches this weekend, everyone should just watch all of them. But definitely tune into this one because this will be a really good game.
I'm with you. I'm going with Kansas City Current in this one as well. I think at this point in the season, you take a look at the teams in front of you, sort of the records of performances that they've been putting together. And we've been coming in and week out talking about this Kansas City Current side picking up results. They're one of these teams that are going on a remarkable undefeated streak, right? They've extended that into double digits. They've got 5 wins, I believe, in their last 6. It's just the momentum that is working in their favor, combined with the play that they're producing out on the pitch. And quite frankly, I think we're doing this ahead of availability reports in front of us to access, but even without that, just the personnel that's available for Kansas, that has been available lately for Kansas City versus the personnel that's been available for Angel City, I'm going to give it to Kansas City. I want to see another big game from Lola Bonta. I think she's been a huge asset for this team. And again, if we do see somebody like a Victoria Pickett unavailable, because she did kind of come out of that previous game with a bit of a knock, in the event that she's unavailable, I think there is going to be maybe a little over reliance on somebody like a Labanta. So we'll see how that shakes out. Moving on to Saturday, though, we've got a triple header of matches here. Let's start with the team that we were just talking about, Lisa. New Jersey, New York, Gotham FC going to be facing Orlando Pride. But there's also been a bit of news coming out of this Houston midweek match, and it's going to perhaps impact this game. Haley Hansen traded from Houston Dash to Orlando Pride. This one just getting announced fairly recently. Orlando Pride receiving Hansen, obviously, and then Houston will be getting $75,000 in allocation money, as well as a 2023 NWSL draft second round pick. So let's maybe talk about how this could possibly impact this game. What do you think? Do you think, is it too early? Is this trade too recent to have somebody like Hansen have an impact on this pitch? And also give me your pick, Lisa. Who you going with this one?
Well, we have to remember that Orlando also just traded with OL Reign for Ali Watt. So they've now acquired Watt, a forward, and Hansen, two players that haven't been seeing significant time at their old clubs, right? Ali Watt was getting in and out of games. Haley Hansen has kind of fallen off the ship a little bit with Houston, with Juan Carlos Samaros stepping into the role. So we talked about it with Ali Watt. Huge moment for her. I think this is going to advance her career going to Orlando. I think similar could be said about Haley Hansen. This is a great move for her as someone who could potentially see a lot more playing time at a team like Orlando. Will she play this weekend? Hey, I'm not I wouldn't put it past Seb Hines. Like, why not? As this trade happens, she's got a couple days of training to travel to Philadelphia, because this game for Gotham Orlando is being played at Subaru Park in Philadelphia. So it will be a home game for Gotham, but not at Red Bull Arena. And when we look at this Orlando side, I've just been really impressed with what they've been able to do and almost play spoiler these last few weeks in the NWSL. They're coming off of 5 games undefeated, 2 wins in their last 5, a slew of ties in the middle there. But a player like Carrie Bello, the rookie out of Penn State, the forward, has grown with confidence every time she steps on the pitch for Orlando. She sends crosses in. She led Orlando in their last 2 games. 2 games she started, played 90 minutes, led them in crosses into the box, led them in entries into the final third, led them also in pass completion. So Carrie Bello, a player definitely to keep an eye on in this match. And with Gotham, as we just said, they're now without Margaret Purse heading into this match. At least they know that. They don't have to play down a player, but I just don't think it's going to happen for them. I mean, this game is incredibly interesting because you could almost say it's like 2 bottom table teams. Orlando is number 8 in the standings. Gotham is 11, but Orlando, I think they're going to get the win in this one. Go back-to-back wins for the Pride.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think, again, we just got to take a look at the momentum swings that are occurring right now during this phase of this final phase of the regular season. And Orlando Pride are one of the stories in terms of, the bottom half table teams who perhaps are one of these teams on the outside looking in. And I think in making some of these moves, whether it was a move with Oil Rain for Ali Watt or this recent move with the Dash for Haley Hansen, for me, that doesn't just symbolize a look ahead. It absolutely means that. It means solidifying players within roles for the future, but there's also a little bit of rolling the dice on this season still as it's in play. So perhaps we will get to see these players make an impact in some capacity. But I think even if we don't, the team as assembled in their current momentum, I think have enough here to perhaps go and finally get that long elusive win from Gotham in 2022 here. Well, this is going to be another one of those matches, though, where we talk a lot about that. Teams that have played each other a little bit more often because they were paired up in the Challenge Cup. And Orlando Pride was unable to maybe kind of break through against this Gotham FC side. But here we are near late August, and we have these two teams having this familiarity with each other, but they're in completely different phases and states of their season now. And I think that the Pride are going to go into this one and take advantage of the fact that Gotham does not have somebody like a Purse to account for, and go ahead and continue and extend their undefeated streak to 7. So I'm going to go with a win, not just a result. I'm going to go with an Orlando Pride win in this one. Let's take a look at the next one on Saturday. This one also kicking off at 7 p.m. Eastern. It's North Carolina Courage versus Chicago Red Stars. The Courage hosting this one. And listen, we've been talking about these Courage games, and we said there's just no way that there are going to be boring games, apparently, against the Courage. They're going to be shootouts, apparently. Who do you got in this one, Lisa?
So this match is very interesting because North Carolina has not won a game in 6 games. They have picked up points on ties, but they haven't won since they played way back in June, and that was just way too long ago. But they've scored so many goals. That's like the craziest thing about it. They've scored 3 goals in their last 3 games, 2 the game before that. So they're coming off of 9 goals in their last 3 games. So they should be winning, right? Like when you look at those types of statistics, 9 goals in 3 games, North Carolina should be picking up wins, but they're not because their defense is struggling to prevent goals from going in. Their goal differential is horrible because of that right now in the standings at -3. They could be so much more considering how many goals they've scored on the season at 23. Diana Ordonez leads all rookies. She's got 8 goals right now. They've got Caroline back. They've got Debinha back, the Brazilian internationals. And I think that those two, Caroline and Debinha, enhance Ordonez's game, and it truly elevates. Now, it comes down to defense for this North Carolina side because they're going to score goals, right? We'll probably see Diana Ordonez get another one because why not? She's got 3 header goals on the year. Let's give her a 4th. But against a Chicago side that's been incredibly good at putting up goals and incredibly good at defending against other teams. Now, Chicago's coming off of a loss, though, so they've struggled a little bit. That loss to Angel City did not help Chicago in the standings, but in this match, I want to see North Carolina get their first win in 6 games. I'm going to give it to the Courage. I want them to lock it down defensively against a very tough Chicago team. It's going to come down to the midfield battle between these two sides. And if Chicago wins that midfield battle and they get on the board, it'll be very tough for North Carolina to score and come back from that. But I still have North Carolina getting a win.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I'm with you because I think it really depends on who's available for Chicago, quite frankly. So I'm also going with North Carolina to finally break through and get the win. I think Carolina has shown us that they're kind of entering an interesting phase of their season, right? Where they've been in last place for almost the entirety of this regular season. But during this second half, perhaps this final stretch of the season, they're kind of going out there with the mentality like, okay, we're just going to go ahead and participate in a wild shootout. And we're just going to have to just try to score more goals than the other team. And unfortunately, again, depending on Chicago's availability, they were without Mal Pugh last week against Angel City. Head coach Chris Petroselli saying it was due to inflammation, of the knee. So they're going to be cautious with that. So there's a little bit of question marks in terms of how Mal Pugh will be available for this game, if she will, and if she is, what's the minute restriction if they're where they had a really strong game against Angel City and were able to do mostly everything but actually get a goal. And against North Carolina Courage, where they're just like, let's score all these goals willy-nilly, you're going to have to come with the same energy. And I don't know if Chicago is going to be able to keep up in the attacking side of this game. And I also don't know if they're going to be able to keep up on the defensive side of this game, because they were also had to see Aaron Wright get subbed out of that game last week as well. So they are very, very, very thin at their back line. We're seeing a lot of teams make a lot of moves, and for some reason Chicago hasn't made any moves for their defensive backs.
So that's what you want. I'm going to call you out on this as our Chicago.
That's not a call. I'm putting it on the mic.
You want Chicago to make some trades for more of a defensive player. I mean, considering their defense is dropping like flies, it's horrible. So you want them to make a trade for a defender?
If they're not able to do a trade, they have to try to figure something else out. It's not. They're very, very thin at back line right now, and I think the answer was going to be Aaron Wright, but there's a little bit of unknowns right now in terms of her availability moving forward after coming out of that Angel City match. So we'll see. I think that you have a team that has been able to navigate this season pretty well. But like most teams during this time of the season, you have teams that'll rise and teams that'll fall. And we're seeing that with Chicago. We're seeing that with San Diego. There are slip and slides that are happening in that upper half of the table. And I think there are two teams in particular that you can look at who are kind of hitting a certain stretch of the season and kind of hitting that struggle a little bit. One of them, I think, is Chicago, and I think this next one is San Diego. So let's make a pick for them. We both went North Carolina in this game. Let's take a look at San Diego Wave FC versus Houston. Lisa,
I want you to go first
in this game.
You go first with your pick. I've gone first for all of them. Who do you have?
It's gonna be a draw. This one's gonna be a draw. You've got Houston Dash coming off of a midweek match, and thank goodness they got those 3 points, because I don't know if they're gonna be able to get them on a quick turnaround against a San Diego Wave FC side that are probably maybe hitting the point where they want to get. I won't say desperate for a win, but they want to get not just a win, but a convincing win, right? We're talking about their last 6 games where they've got 3 losses, right? Only 1 win in their last 4 games. They've dropped. They had a pretty good stronghold on that number 1 spot for a large part of the first half of the season, and they are starting to hit some tough times in this regular season. And I think that this one is going to come out to a tie.
Sandra, I did not want to pick all of the same.
We're going to do it. Do you have this one as your draw?
I have this one as my draw too.
Oh, no.
Remember, Caitlin Sheridan is out. She got a red card at the end of the last match for San Diego against Orlando Pride, a game that they dropped, and they're pissed about that because they hit the post 3 times in that match. And then Caitlin Sheridan went off on the officials after the game. She gets a red card. She's out. We've got Carly Telford, English international, stepping in for San Diego. So I that's why I'm like, okay, San Diego's going to put up a really big fight, but Houston's on a run right now, on a tear. And frankly, I think the quick turnaround for Houston is going to benefit them, honestly, because they have this momentum going. Let's keep it going. Ebony Salmon, we talked about it. She's on this incredible streak. It's a draw. Oh my gosh. I can't believe we picked all of them the same.
All right.
This
makes me even more excited for the recap. Honestly, I can't wait for everybody to join us. Then hopefully you all do. We want to thank you for joining us today. Thanks as always for listening and supporting Attacking Third. Thank you to all of you who voted for us. Please, a reminder that if you voted for us, please check your email, check those spam folders to see if you have been chosen to vote for Attacking Third in the final round, okay? And make sure you enter to win a $100 Paramount Plus gift card. Subscribe to us on YouTube, like this video, drop your social media handle in the chat, watch the Women's Cup on Paramount Plus, and we will be back with more on Saturday night. Program notes. Saturday night, we're going to recap the weekend. Subscribe to us, YouTube, to know when we will go live. For Sandra Herrera and Lisa Roman, this was Attacking Third.